real fear.
The bodies in my local cemetery were dug up. I just found out the horrifying truth. It was late one October night in 1985. When I was driving home from work, I was about to pull into my driveway when my neighbor flagged me down. I got out of my car and he told me about the incident. All of the bodies in the cemetery were dug up. It was the largest cemetery in town, and the bodies had completely disappeared. There had to be about 300 bodies in that cemetery, and I had thought my neighbor was insane when he told me, but I could tell it was true, just by the fear and confusion in his eyes. That night I had drove to the cemetery to find out what happened to myself. When I arrived, there were police swarming the area, and I was told to go home by one of the officers. I had relatives in that cemetery. One of them was my deceased wife who had died last year in a freak accident. My half-brother was also buried there, along with my aunts and uncles, and even my grandparents. I had so many questions. How would someone be able to move all 300 of those bodies without someone noticing? How could they possibly dig up every single body, and who would be sick enough to do so? I assumed it must have been a group effort. I went home that night and went to bed. My mind was all over the place and was unable to rest. When I finally shut my eyes, there was a loud banging on the door. It was 6 a.m. I opened the door to see two officers who were going around asking everyone in town if they hadn't seen or heard anything that night. They entered my house and began to ask questions. Where was I during the incident? Did I see anything suspicious while driving home, etc.? About 5 minutes later, they left, and they planned on searching on the other side of the town. The cops were all over town. The country decided to prevent the case from entering the local news channel. From what I heard, they wanted to keep the case manageable and didn't want dozens of news reporters swarming the town. It's been about a week later, and I hadn't been able to sleep straight. The cops still haven't been able to find any trace. That day, I was driving to my father's house. My dad lived on the casual side of the town, and everywhere you looked it was all forest. It's a 40-minute drive to his house and all forest the entire way there. My dad lived alone with a few other small homesteads around him. When I arrived at my dad's house, he wasn't at home. I had no idea where he couldn't be. He hardly even left his house. It was on my drive back when I smelled something. I smelled something so horrid that I pulled over on the side of the road to vomit. The air smelled like there were 1,000 corpses surrounding me. I should have reported it to the police, but I don't know why I didn't. I should have never investigated the smell by myself. It was getting late. It was around 4 p.m., and I decided to walk into the forest. I covered my nose with my shirt, but even then the smell still found a way into my nostrils. As I kept walking deeper into the dense forest, I saw an increasing amount of owls. There were owls everywhere. It felt like every tree branch had an owl perched on it. I then saw in the distance an abandoned house. The house was black and covered with ash. It looked to have burned down about a few decades ago and was covered in vines and brush. But the most unsettling feature was the amount of owls. All you could hear were owls all around you. Thousands were calling all around me, and I could barely hear myself think. I have briefly studied about birds in the past, and these owl calls clearly sounded distressed. It felt like they were warning me, trying to keep me away from that house. And that smell was 100% coming from that house. It was so bad I felt like I was going to pass out. The doorway was just a gaping hole, and my eyes began to water from the horrid smell. The walls and floors were entirely burnt and rotten. My ears began to ring from the old noises. I followed the smell to the point where I parked even more all over myself this time. In the corner of one of the rooms, I saw a doorway. The stairs led down. I began to walk down them, and at about halfway down the stairs, I could see several human limbs. It was when I was on the final step when I could see the whole room, piles of corpses, and there was a figure in the middle of the mass, in a fetal position. It was rocking back and forth, humming to itself. It was skinny, so skinny, the spine was exposed. I literally mean the bone was sticking out of the thing. I turned around and made a run for it, my footsteps pounding on the stairs. I was about halfway to the top when I heard the thing sprinting up the stairs behind me. By the time I made it to the top of the stairs, the thing was inches behind me. I was about to make it out the front door when my foot fell through one of the floorboards. I then felt that Talcon's claw into my stomach and dragged me back down the basement stairs. I opened my eyes and I saw it clearly. It looked just like an owl. The head, the eyes, the way it moved its neck. It slashed my throat with its talons, then threw me into the pile of corpses. I don't know how I'm still alive. I have lost a lot of blood. And worst of all, I don't know when that thing will come back. If anyone is reading this, I'm probably dead. I'm probably going to rot here with the rest of the 300 dead bodies. This story is about my Uncle David who had passed away on when I was 6 years old, going in 7 years. This timeline takes place around the early 2000s as it was very sudden and unexpected. Obviously, I was only just a child and didn't comprehend what death was about clearly. I was very naive and oblivious to what was happening around me. At this time, my uncle had passed on from cancer. Now, he had not told anyone in our family that he was sick and was not on any medications or chemo. When his death was sudden and unexpected during this time, everyone was very saddened and heartbroken. Now, fast forward about a month later after his death and burial, I was living with my father at this apartment for the summer. Keep in mind, this apartment also used to belong to my uncle and some of his old roommates, but when my uncle had passed away, my father and I, plus my siblings, moved into the apartment to live in. Mind you, I was very young. I was also born with hearing loss and wore hearing aids 24/7. I didn't understand sudden unexpected death. My child mind had blocked out a loss since his passing until I got older and could understand better about that time frame. What I do remember was around summertime when my dad had just finished renovating one of the bedrooms to my uncle's apartment to be my own bedroom. They had just completely finished it one day and moved all my stuff in there. I was really excited and happy to have my own bedroom since me and my siblings were sleeping in one small cramped space for a while in the apartment. The first night I slept in my room, it was exciting at first until I had this eerie feeling later on that night. I was having trouble falling asleep and waking up to sounds, feeling like I was being watched for some reason. I got up and turned the light on and also turned on the big TV in my room. It was just static when it turned on. I tried to fall asleep, but it still wasn't helping. I tried to think of happy thoughts and soon fell asleep, or so I thought. I had woke up in the middle of the night and heard wailing and crying outside of my bedroom door. I don't remember if I had turned off the lights or if my dad did when I was asleep, but I got up in the darkness and went to go up to my bedroom door, which was closed and locked. I put my ear against the door and listened closely. All I could make out was wailing and crying or yelling noises from a human voice. I got a bit scared but had some courage and confidence to open the door and peek around. I realized I could only hear the voice but couldn't make out anything out in the living room.
It looked too dark to see anything really. I decided to step out of my room completely and see if maybe it was just my brothers arguing or play fighting. As soon as I stepped my foot out of that door, the crying and yelling got louder. It started to sound like my brother's voice, but not completely. I had asked out loud if it was my brothers and if they were okay, but it wasn't. I soon realized it was the sounds of my uncle's voice. It continued to cry out, "Help me, Louis! Help me! I need your help, please!" And I knew instantly he was talking about my dad who has that name. My brother's name is Louis as well, so hence why I thought it was them at first. I panicked because I didn't know what to do or say. I quickly just went back into my room and locked the door. But I could still hear my uncle's voice yelling and crying in pain out to my dad, but muffled. It was very tense and traumatic since I had no clue what to do. But I blocked out the sounds with a pillow and forced myself to fall asleep. The next morning I had waken up and waited for everyone else to get up. As soon as I heard everyone making breakfast, I started asking everyone and my dad about last night. "Did anyone else hear noise last night?" I asked hesitantly. Everyone said no and asked me why I asked. "I heard someone or possibly Uncle David crying and yelling out to you, Dad. He kept saying your name like he was in pain. At first I thought it was Louis, our brother, but Uncle David was calling out to you, Dad." And I looked down because my dad had a shocked reaction on his face and everyone was a bit confused and silent. My brothers proceeded to say it was just a bad dream or just me making up stuff, but I didn't really care. I just wanted to see how my dad would react, but he somewhat reacted the same way as them. It saddened me, but I didn't know what else to say or do. So I just let it be for the next 16 years, and I'm now 23 years old. I will say I did have other experiences or encounters with voices whispering in my ear and calling out my name. But if you guys want me to speak about it, I will in another post sometime. I still trying to figure out if it was all in my childhood heard, all my childhood head, or if it was real because if I'm being honest, it felt real and sounded real. His cries and yells sounded so sad and broken, like he was just in pain. I have prayed over my uncle's spirit and hope he has found the light. I just need to know if maybe it was something, then nothing is all. How could I know what's real when cancer broke my mind? I was back there, convulsing on an operating table. Maxed faces looked down on me, silhouetted against electric lights, like rock moons eclipsing a faraway sun. The theater air was blazed and sterile, the illumination piercing. Surgeons need to be able to see what they are doing, I suppose. Enigmatic, eccentric multilators who I love to hate. I have no doubt it was one of them, looming over my open skull behind me, who gave a whispered signal to the anesthetist. The nurses buzzed all around me, working to the lunatic beeping of medical machines. The edges of my vision blackened. The best way I can describe the journey to unconsciousness while having a seizure is a slow circular narrowing of vision and a gradual yet total sensory loss. It's like in the cartoons or movies. It's a small death. I sat bolt upright in bed, breathless and sweat drenched. The covers were soaked. I pinched myself hard and felt pain. The dream was over. I heaved myself out of bed and went to the bathroom to splash my face. It was a memory, nothing more. I braced myself on the edge of the sink, tapped running and looked in the mirror. Water dripped off my nose and my gray eyes were bloodshot. Tentative, I lifted a hand to the top of my head. A deep 4-inch scar ran in a C shape, just left on center and hidden by wispy radiotherapy damaged hair. My partner Clary is adamant that I'm still as handsome as ever, but I don't see it. I switched off the bathroom light and stumbled through darkness to my bedside, where I flicked on the lamp. There was a framed picture of Clary and I at my Air Force induction ceremony. In that world, I'm 6'4", uniformed, tanned, with sandy hair and bold upright. She's pretty, with skin like proclaim and auburn hair touching her pronounced collarbones. Her green dress matches the backdrop as she intended. We posed under a willow tree, next to a little stream, beaming smiles at my mom behind the camera. I tossed the damp sheet and covers onto the floor and lay on the bare mattress, staring at the ceiling. I didn't need to look at the picture to see him because he lived in my mind's eye. The airman in the picture, fresh out of his basic training. That proud, confident man I would been. My self-belief had taken a beating. Absolutely, but I hadn't lost it completely. Not quite. What I had lost fully was my innocence. I ached for it, being oblivious of what was yet to come. I killed the lights and sleep returned. Swimming through fog, I found myself standing on undulating ground. I was dressed in full plate armor and held a wide-bladed sword that glinted in the moonlight. A field was before me where a legion of skeletal dead men stood, and a dark forest lay beyond. High on a throne at the back of their ranks was Clary. I tightened my grip on the sword's handle and strode forward. Gathering pace now, I lowered the tip to point it at the skeleton army. A clear signal of intent. I smashed into them, swinging my weapon in wide crease to cleave 5 or 6 of them at a time. Loose bones and rotten flesh clattered around me as I punched a hole through their lines, always moving towards Clary. The night air in this dream world was cold in my nostrils. As I got closer, Clary descended from the throne and ran for the tree line. I burst from the rear of the dead man's formation in pursuit. Clary, wait. I paused, confused, thrown. She was their leader, making me her enemy. That made no sense. She cast a fearful glance over her shoulder and disappeared beneath the dark eaves of the forest. The dead man had crept up on me while I stood, and when they pounced, I could only manage a half stroke. Cold, bony hands took hold on my ankles and wrists. They called instantly, pulling me down and pinning me on my back, suffocating me. Clary, make them stop, please. I sat bolt upright in bed, breathless and sweat-drenched. The covers were soaked. I pinched myself hard and felt pain. The dream was over. I heaved myself out of bed and saw a shape in the gloom over by my desk. I turned on the lamp and jumped at the sight of a man reclining in my office chair. He was slim and lithe-looking, with 4 fingers stapled at his throat. He wore a simple outfit, gray jogging bottoms and a black hoodie. The hood was up so that his twinkling eyes were half in shadow. His nose was hooked, his chin sharp and his smile baleful. I stood there, naked in the half-light, once again pinching my forearm fiercely and trying to deny the pain I felt. Your face was the picture when she left you on the battlefield, Bud. Not quite the knight in shining armor. I'm still dreaming. He spread his palms. You pinched, right? And it hurt. I had, and it had. Who are you? Why are you in my house? I'm the sower of seeds, man. A real handful, if you'll excuse the double entry. But you asked, now that dreams of yours, what do you think? Scary? No. He suddenly sat forward, elbows on knees, and I saw gray hair and a forehead river with deep lines. It's not opposite day, buddy. Think of the symbolism. Indulge me. You fought death to get to your sweetheart. Yet when you did, she turned tail. Makes me wonder whether you fought it or brought it. She certainly saw it and dashed off somewhere you couldn't follow. Meanwhile, what happened to you? They got me and I died. Now we are cooking. You are playing along and you are a good man. You fought bravely, but you fell. Would you want that for her, to suffer that fate? No, not at all. Well, it's a good job she reigned that, isn't it? I see you here tossing and turning and wailing her name, like a baby crying out for mommy. Interpret the dream, and he think you can't go bringing down death on your sweetheart like a damned meteor shower. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But not for her, not yet at least. Beneath the hood I saw the intruder's eyes smolder with humor. I crept closer as he rambled on. Speaking of dust, do you see fear in this here handful of dirt? He rotated his palm to left, it faced the ceiling. Sitting on it was a little pyramid of soot. He closed his hand into a fist and left it pour out onto my desk. It's just dirt, I said, getting closer. He seemed taken aback. It's death. Don't you fear death? You should. Unless you were still under the impression that it's opposite day. Didn't find that funny before, and I still don't know how it happened. Let me take you back a couple of hours. The dream of the operating table when they tried to remove the cancer from your brain, such a terrible shame that it's inoperable. When they pulled and tugged too hard on that little cluster of chaos in your brain and you had a convulsion. What did it feel like? It felt like I was dying, I said. And were you scared? Yes. At last, the truth of it. As soon as you have been so honest, I will make a confession of my own. I put it there as it's sewn by these fair hands. He once again held up his hands like a despot addressing crowds from a palace balcony. I was rounding the edge of my bed now. He was cornered. The doctors said there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. A guy in a hoodie doesn't go around clicking his fingers and shooting cancer lightning bolts at people. It doesn't make any sense, I said. Cancer doesn't make any sense. I don't make any sense. This whole situation doesn't make any sense. Buddy, but here we are. Give yourself another pinch. Why don't you? I lunged for him, but my fingers found no purchase. He was thin air. I crashed into my chair and slumped into unconsciousness, distant laughter ringing in my ears. Rays of light bathed my face as I came to my senses. I uncoiled myself from where I would crashed into the office chair and staggered to my feet, still drunk on the potent cocktail of sleep and dream fragments. I blinked to clear my vision and looked at a bedroom in disarray. Everything could be explained apart from a small pile of soot on my desk.